Well, we want to begin with a closer look at action being taken in the name of U.S. national security, but that might hinder government employees' ability. President Obama released a memo last week to the heads of executive departments and agencies about the National Insider Threat Policy, basically to help detect threats on the inside, employees working inside the government. Now, according to that memo, these threats encompass potential espionage, violent acts against the government or the nation, and unauthorized disclosure of classified information, including the vast amounts of classified data available on interconnected United States government computer networks and systems. Now, the concern here, though, is that this memo might be a larger attempt to silence whistleblowers, since one of the provisions restricts contact between government officials and reporters. Now, to speak more about this is Kevin Gosztola of Blogger with Firedog Lake. Hey there, Kevin. I know you write a lot about whistleblowers and also about government's attempts to crack down on them. Now, this is really interesting because Congress just approved legislation that extends protections for federal employees who want to report wrongdoing. Talk a little bit about the significance of this recent memo.
It's important to note that that legislation actually didn't provide the sort of protections that people who are for whistleblowers' rights would have hoped. They didn't extend it to National Security Agency employees. It just covered the other agencies. So here, what you see is a focus on national security, on clamping down and making sure that the flow of information doesn't take place, and it errs on the side of protecting the policies and programs that are being carried out for so-called national security purposes. And this really has a root in being a response to PFC Bradley Manning's alleged leak of the WikiLeaks documents, which I think is important to put out for context purposes, because after that, they formed a working group and started to put together this activity.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing as Bradley Manning was a member of the military and, is accused of leaking these classified documents, this would fall under what the president has said, needs to be monitored. So what, as far as Bradley Manning, this, took place 2 years ago or more. Talk about, his role and this memo.
Well, what we're seeing is just the slow wheels of bureaucracy turning, because this was part of the program, was that you would go back and get these standards. And what we're seeing with this memo is the agencies following through with establishing these standards. It's superfluous. And it goes along with the fact that there's been this leak hysteria in the past months. Starting in May, you had those stories related to the CIA sting operation with the underwear bomb plot. You had people talking with reporters about the drone program. You had people talking about cyber attacks on Iran. And those stories became really high profile, and senators like Dianne Feinstein were out really raising everyone's calling a lot of attention to it, and making sure that people knew that in her mind this was something very detrimental and there had to be a response. So this is just piling on. In addition to the hysteria in Washington, you now see the insider agency moving forward with this task force proposal.
Well, Senator Ron Wyden has been one of the biggest critics of these types of programs. He even placed a hold on the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013, saying, quote, "I think Congress should be extremely skeptical of any anti-leaks bills that threaten to encroach upon the freedom of the press or that would reduce access to information that the public has a right to know." He goes on to say, without transparent and informed public debate on foreign policy and national security topics, American voters would be ill-equipped to elect the policymakers who make important decisions in these areas. Really interesting, Kevin. Why, though, do you think it is that when you look up, lawmakers who are concerned about Fourth Amendment rights, it is such a small group, namely Senator Wyden?
Well, I suppose it has to do with the fact that there are very few senators and even, congressmen who are willing to confront these national security agencies and raise a stink about these different policies, whether they be warrantless wiretapping, torture, targeted killing programs, whatever might be happening overseas in the way of special operations, those things that really deserve scrutiny and oversight. There are very few senators and Congress people who want to put their careers on the line and challenge military brass, intelligence agency heads. And so you see this. And I think it's very important to make it clear to your viewers that it's already official policy that you would not release classified information if you work at an intelligence agency. So this is adding an extra layer. It's extraneous. It's already known to people who work. And it's clear that these are just additional mechanisms that make it impossible for intelligence agency employees to speak to the press, and it limits it to having only official spokespeople. So you have less views on national security out there in the press. And so it's now more the official line and less what lower level people think about the jobs they're being asked to do.
Yeah, and let's kind of go into detail too, Kevin, about the media aspect of this and what you think it says that the administration has no qualms about trying to limit media access.
Well, it's important that one of the things in this anti-leaks proposal is that you wouldn't be able to enter into a contract with a media company for, I believe the term is at least a year. And in that, there's no definition of media company. So it really amounts to your free speech rights if you're an intelligence agency employee being curtailed. And we're talking about people who leave agencies, former employees. So they're no longer working for these institutions. So you would have to be quiet and you couldn't talk for a period of time. And then you also have the fact that you couldn't talk to people who were lower level and weren't official spokespeople on background. So if you're a journalist, what people should understand is usually you can call up somebody, an agency, and talk to them, and they can give you basic details about how things work. They may not give you what you want so you can report your news story, but it at least helps you understand the way that an agency functions so you can have the right information you need to start to publish a story.
Kevin, just last question. I mean, a lot of people that hear about this say, you know what, these protections are needed. Classified information is that way for a reason. When U.S. security is at risk, when we're talking about some of these people with some of the most privileged, secure information, there needs to be a program in place to make sure that they don't take it outside and make it public and therefore put this country at risk. Kind of separate for us sort of the difference between leaking classified information and not being able to report wrongdoing.
Well, so the concern would be that right now you have this threat of prosecution if you report that something unlawful or corrupt is going on in government. I think that might actually be the case if you look at the fact that the Obama administration in its first term prosecuted more whistleblowers than any other president in the history of this country. So it makes it seem like it's pretty obvious that it's not just about classified information, it's about preventing any controversy from the government having to face any controversy.
Yeah, absolutely. The president, of course, as we saw last week, willing to pardon a turkey or even two, but not a whistleblower. Kevin Gosztola, a blogger at Fire Dog Lake. Thanks so much.